Once you find yourself in conflict with a narcissist, it's a virtual guarantee they're going to start playing head games with you. That's why I put together a new course. It's very extensive called Anger Games. I'm going to teach you how to manage anger and conflict with a narcissist. There's a link below that's going to show you how to register, and I hope that you find it to be very insightful. I'd like to focus with you on a dichotomy that gets to the heart of what drives individuals to be who they are. And that's simply this. Are you the kind of person who's driven by the power of love? Or are you the kind of person who's driven by the love of power? Two very different mindsets, right? Now, most of you know, okay, I guess the correct answer is love, right? And certainly we know that love is a bedrock ingredient in a life well lived. Whenever I would be talking with individuals in my therapy office, in my mind, I'm constantly wondering, well, how does love inform the way that we want to manage all the different kinds of issues that individuals would bring into my office? When we have an attitude of love, we say that love is the ultimate power. It impacts our general demeanor. Or in other words, are you a no person or can you be a yes person? Your commitment to love impacts how well you listen to other individuals. It certainly impacts the way that you coordinate and cooperate with other individuals, or how you manage conflict, or what kind of social habits you prioritize. I mean, who you are in respect to knowing and living out the essence of love says a lot. And if you learn to master that, it's going to take you to some good places. Now, narcissists can be what we refer to as, they can do virtue signaling. In other words, they're posers. It's like, oh yeah, I know what the correct answer to that question is. And so sometimes they can give the impression of saying, yeah, I want to be a loving person. Some of them don't even care. But some of them want to give the impression, and that's where it's most dangerous, where it's like, yeah, I'm a loving person and I believe in all of that. But then when you watch the way they conduct their lives, once they begin tasting the opposite of love, which is not entirely power, but they are driven by the craving for power, then you begin noticing that there's a great difference in the way that they manage themselves. These individuals, when you have moments of difference, they manage it in such a way where it becomes very conflictual. They can't stand the fact that you differ from them. They want to have your deference. Likewise, as they gravitate more towards the love of power, it certainly informs the way that they manage their opinions. They can be stubborn, they can be dogmatic, they can be closed-minded. They create an in versus out kind of mentality based on how well you do or don't agree with them. Their love of power impacts the way that they process differences. They're not curious when you say, well, I have a different thought. They simply invalidate, and they need your deference. They need you to be how they are. They correct you, and they're not bashful about that. In the decision-making process, when you're with that narcissist who has a love of power, narcissists look for yes people. It's like, well, I've already made up my mind, and so if you and I are going to make a decision, you just need to have the same decision as me. And or they look for popular people, and they look for people that are just going to back them up and prop them up. That's what the love of power does, and it's very different from the power of love. Now, a really interesting question is, what is it that holds people to this love of power? Why is that so important to them? And what I'd like to do is I'd like to go back to that dichotomy mindset, and I want to explain how love can impact you and how you manage life. And then we want to compare that with how the love of power can impact you. Let's take a look at that. When an individual is focused on the power of love, they realize love seeks to affirm. The person who has a love of power says, well, I seek to have a one-up position over you. They must be affirmed. Very different. The person who's driven by love, it wants to enter into another person's space. They want to connect. The person who's driven by power says, well, I want to draw you into my space and I want you to conform. Very different. The person who's driven by love in conflict is very willing and in fact wants to be diplomatic. And when I say diplomatic, they want to be both sensitive and effective in the way that they maneuver through differences. Whereas the person who's driven by power in the midst of conflict is just simply inevitably forceful. It's like, no, let me explain to you how it has to be. And they can be very pushy. You know how that is in the midst of some of their arguments. The person who is driven by love seeks to include. It's like, well, if you differ from me, let's see if we can find some common ground. The person who's driven by power seeks to exclude. If you're not like me, then get out of here. I don't want to hear anything from you. And they have no conception that they might be able to learn something from somebody who thinks a little bit differently. When individuals are driven by love, they utilize future thinking. In other words, it's like, I know that how I conduct myself now is going to impact how we are in tomorrow and the next day and the years to come. So where are my behaviors and where are my attitudes leading me? And I want to make sure it leads in a good kind of way. Whereas the person who's driven by power is now focused. In other words, I want what I want now. I don't care where it's leading down the road. All I know is I'm mad, I'm ticked, and I don't like the way you're thinking. Do what I say and do it now. They don't have that healthy future thinking. The person who's driven by love seeks to set people free. Other individuals, when they're in that person's presence, it's like, oh, good, I can breathe. You allow me to be who I am. The person who's driven by power wants to take away an individual's freedom and they want to put them inside of cages. It's like, no, you need to be what I say you need to be. And they're threatened by another person's independence. It's like, that doesn't bode well for me. So in their power, they strip away your freedom. In addition, when you're driven by love, you seek to build another person's self-esteem. Whereas when you're driven by power, you destroy another person's self-esteem. Taking an aside, you may have heard me before use the term the significance principle. The best way for me to find my significance is to help you find your significance. Narcissists don't think that way. It's like, no, I need to be significant, and if you're not the way I want, then I'm going to destroy you. They're not significance builders. They're not self-esteem builders. This is especially important to me. When you have love, it means that you're willing to step into another person's pain. One of the things that I find to be a huge privilege is when somebody tells me, I'm feeling pain, I'm struggling. What an honor it is for me to say, may I step into that pain with you? I'd like to put an arm of encouragement around you and let's you and me figure out how we can go down that path with each other. Whereas when you're driven by power, not only are you not willing to enter into someone's pain, you actually create pain in others in the way that you treat them, and then you perpetuate that pain. The person who's driven by love is plain and simply committed to offering companionship. Whereas when you are driven by power, you crave someone's affirmation and connection to you. I have to have you go along with me. So companionship is something they gain, they get, as opposed to something they would just simply give away. The person who's driven by love offers reassurance and comfort. In other words, I want to be your safe person. The person who's driven by power offers criticism. And then eventually they'll offer you contempt. They're not going to be your safe person, period, end of discussion on that one. Now, it seems glaringly obvious that a life that's grounded in the power of love is far more successful than the person who's grounded in the love of power. And so a really interesting question is, well, what is it then that makes the power of love so difficult for these individuals? Like I say, some of them might know that the answer is, yeah, I guess I have to have love. But you see, when a person is grounded in love, there's a few admissions you have to make. And that is, the loving person says, I realize I'm not always right. And the person who's grounded in power basically thinks, I can't do that, because that implies that if I say I'm not always right, that means that something is off inside of me, or there's a better way than my way. And so they don't want to self-correct. They certainly don't want to renounce anything on the inside of themselves and say, yeah, I need to take a different path. They have too much anger on the inside that drives them. And to them, if it's not all about me, then they don't want to pursue it. And so by nature of the ingredients of narcissism, they're just simply going to continue to gravitate toward the love of power. And you and I'm hoping, can say, well, there's a power in the world that we can have, but it's not of that dominance kind. It's the power of love. The more you know and understand love, the more pivotal it is then in helping you become a mature and a good and decent individual. Lacking love, you go all in for cynicism. You go all in towards destroying other individuals. And then you ultimately go all the way into nothingness. You take away all that's good, and what you're left with is a psychological desert. Now, as you know, one of the things that I talk to you about here on Team Healthy is we stand for dignity, respect, and civility. And when you spell it out, it's kind of hard to refute it, at least in my mind. But then over and over, as you go back to that narcissist, you realize they won't say it out loud, but in their minds, it's like, if power means that I destroy, but it still means that I stay in the superior position, then I'm going in that direction. That's what I stand for. I love power. And my response simply is, wow. Just wow. Now, I hope that videos like this can give you some good food for thought. I hope that it stimulates you as you try to determine who you want to be, and it also helps you understand who that difficult person in front of you might be and what's driving them. If you haven't already hit that subscribe button, I would encourage you to do so. We're going to keep more videos coming toward you. I know that many times when you're trying to sift these kind of topics through, it's good to have a therapist that can work it through with you. Obviously, I mentioned I've been a therapist all my adult life. I'm retired now, and so I make my referrals to BetterHelp.com. It's one of my sponsors. There's a link below that will take you to their website. It can be so helpful for you to sit down with a person that says, I'd like to know you, and I'd like to know what your backstory is and who you are and what your needs are and what your strengths and weaknesses are, so that we can sift it out. If the need is there, please get the help that would be so beneficial for you. It can truly be life-altering. In addition, one of the things that I continue to do is I have been putting together courses that are online here on the internet, and we have access to them, of course, on my website. Each course has 25 or more video lessons, and each lesson has corresponding documents and guided questions that go along with it. My newest one is called Anger Games. It's how not to be pulled into the anger that they want to suck you into, and understanding all the many dimensions of that. I really like that course quite a bit. Also, we have the course This Is Me, about establishing your boundaries, free to be finding yourself despite the controllers. And then also we have Ready, Set, Connect, which is about how to have healthy connections with other individuals, and that's proven to be quite popular as well. In addition, we have my webinars that are on the website, and they're 90-minute presentations of different nature. We have access to my podcasts, books, my articles that are on there. So please avail yourself to the resources we have. I hope that you can be grounded in love, the power of love, and you can be a force for goodness. And it's crazy when you love power. Over time, you become boorish, and people say, "Get me away from this." As we focus on being a loving individual, and that becomes a centerpiece, a bedrock for who we are, I'm hoping you can see that it leads us towards a sense of steadiness emotionally and psychologically, and ultimately towards our place of peace.